Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Black Friday. Welcome to Why We
Why are you
Vote.
being racist so early in the show, Brian?
I don't know. Why not? It's Black Friday.
Look, those are real mountains. The glare kind of sucks because the lighting in here was really weird and there was weird shadows, but I've got 14ers over my shoulder. It's pretty cool.
14ers?
Yeah, 14,000 plus foot mountains. It's
Is
a
that what you
thing
guys
in
call
the
it?
climbing community. Yeah.
God,
Kind of a big deal.
You guys are so gay.
Sure.
So gay.
We'll go with that.
Well, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, from flat Florida to hilly 14er, Colorado. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Ashe, second time together today, so I'm not going to ask you how your Thanksgiving went, but I'm sure it went very well hanging out with Annie.
How about your Black Friday? How'd your Black Friday go? Because I haven't seen you since early.
I watched the Bears Eagles, was hoping the Eagles would win, and they sucked.
How'd the Eagles defense do? I have them in the game.
Not good. They gave up, I think, 27, maybe 24 last I looked. I think it was 24.
Oh, wow. Whatever they did, it looks good in my chances. I got 4 points. Looks good in my chances against Brad. My projection has gone up.
Yeah. Well, we've got an interesting show for you tonight. Before we get into that show, though, let's go ahead and talk about our sponsors, guys. Stack Sats with River, the Bitcoin-only platform built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Why River? Zero fee reoccurring buys means you can stack Bitcoin effortlessly, hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. 3.8%. Is it 3.8% now? Interest on cash, FDIC insured, no minimums, and withdraw at any time. You get expert US-based support, human help, plus private client services for big buys over $100,000. Business accounts will boost your balance sheet with Bitcoin and earn that 3.8% interest paid in Bitcoin. You'll get top-tier wallets, send, receive, and manage your Bitcoin securely. And you'll get unmatched security, fully reserve custody, multi-sig cold storage, and proof of reserves. Join the Bitcoin revolution at badlandsmedia.tv/river and earn some real returns. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/river. And if you guys didn't take advantage of the drop,
dip. I have my buys.
Buy the dip. I bought a lot on the dip at 82,000. I was proud of that. And it's back up around 90. I think it hit 93 today, and it's back around 91. So, yeah.
See, PJ Morgan knows what a 14er is. Freaking Flatlander.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. All right, let's hear a message from our favorite election denier. Actually, Ashe is my favorite election denier, and I better be hers. So there we go. But let's hear about MyPillow.com.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Made in America sale ever. We just put huge discounts on products made right here in the USA. MyPillow bed pillows, body pillows, go anywhere pillows, bolster pillows, all made with my patented adjustable fill. Mattresses, mattress toppers, mattress pads, adjustable bed frames, mattress foundations, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. And now we're expanding our USA products beyond just quality sleep. Like the cross I wear every day, now available in both men's and women's. We even have USA-made socks. And are you tired of being tired? Try our new health beverage, Rev 7. Or how about my coffee, the greatest coffee ever. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get deep discounts on all these products. Plus, for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
All right, MyPillow.com, promo code Badlands. And
the chopper.
There you go. And the slippers, especially if you're up in that 14er altitude where it's nice and cold.
Well, if you're up in it's like, so the mountains that you see are at 14,000 feet. We're a little under 9,000 feet where we're at right now. And if you're up here, then if you're up in this general level, you're going to want to get the MyPillow flannel sheets and the mattress topper, because you definitely want a mattress topper because it will change your life.
I am at 9
inches.
No, feet. I'm at 9 feet. I'm in the second floor of my house. So I'm at 9 feet.
Nice. Did your ears pop when you went up
Yeah,
the stairs?
yeah, I was like blown out. I'm like trying to. It's crazy, man. I will say this: the flannel sheets are amazing because I have them on my bed right now, and because I had the Giza sheets, but my dogs, I've had them for like 6 years now and 5 years, and my dogs were playing on it and they ripped a hole, and the hole got bigger the more they played because they like to wrestle on the bed. So I am using the flannel sheets now. A little toasty for Florida summers, but good for the winter. Good for the
The
winter.
My Pillow flannel sheets are toasty for 5,280 feet down. Like, actually, where I live is about 6,200 feet, but it's like February is the 1 month I can use my flannel My Pillow sheets because they are so toasty. If you live in a cold place, you want them. They will warm you right up. For you, Brian, I can't imagine you could sleep at all.
Oh
It'd be
yeah,
way too hot.
no, it's
Oh, no, I'm forgetting about your air conditioner thing in Florida. Forgot about
yeah.
that.
We use
It's
air
like,
conditioners down
40
here.
degrees inside the house. Yeah.
Yeah, we use AC units. All right, so before we bring our guest on, just two real quick stories I want to go over. A big win and a big expose. Let's go to Tom Fitton right now with Judicial Watch to talk about motor voter.
And in this case, there was a decision up in the Third Circuit, which oversees Pennsylvania, that prevented a great group that does great election law work as well, the Public Interest Legal Foundation. I encourage you to look them up and
Shout out to Pilf.
and
They are
look
good.
at their great activity. They're a nonprofit public interest law firm dedicated to election integrity. And they had sued for access to Pennsylvania voter rolls following a failure to disclose an estimated 100,000 non-citizen registered voters. Pennsylvania officials reportedly admitted that for decades, the Department of Motor Vehicles had allowed non-U.S. citizens to register to vote through the state's motor voter bill or system. So you go in, you get a driver's license, which they were giving, I guess, to non-citizens. Remember, it's not just illegal aliens who can't vote in federal elections. It's also
Green
aliens.
card holders. Yep.
People, if you're not a citizen, you can't vote, even if you're here otherwise legally. So I guess they were letting these non-citizens apply and get voter registration.
Holy crap, Ashe.
Stunning. I can't even imagine how that would happen, except for the ERIC system enables all of it, and they love flooding the voter rolls.
I mean, can we say I told you so, or you and I have been screaming this forever while they tell us no, there's no illegals registering to vote. It doesn't matter if they vote or not; they just need to be registered. They'll cast a vote whether they know it or not.
Fake voters, fake ballots, fake counts. You need them all, and they're all involved. And the voting rolls. My beef with Tom Fitton. I got beef with just about everybody. Let's be honest.
Yes,
But
you
my
do.
beef with Tom Fitton is that he had Jenna Griswold on the ropes.
I know.
He had her on the ropes here about the hygiene of our voter rolls. She entered a consent decree with him, with Judicial Watch v. Griswold. Look it up. And then when she violated the consent decree on the very first time she was supposed to report, they went back to court, and the court was like, yeah, we didn't retain jurisdiction. How did you let that happen, Tom?
I don't know. Good one.
Had her.
And then we got an update here from my friend Bahizzi. Today, the Fifth Circuit just ruled that ballots must be received by election day, and any state laws that allow them to be received and counted after election day violate federal law. Quote, Congress statutorily designated a singular day for the election of members of Congress and the appointment of presidential electors. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirms this quote-unquote day for the election is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials. Because Mississippi statute allows ballot receipts up to 5 days after the federal election day, it is preempted by federal law. We reverse the district of court's contrary judgment and remand for further proceedings. Ashe, do you know what the big takeaway from that is?
No, what is the big takeaway, Brian?
Think about that. All right. They've designated a singular day for the election, and that's in quotes, of members of Congress and the appointment of presidential electors. Text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for the election is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by state officials.
So what you're saying is that they're setting a precedent for us to not have early voting anymore? Yeah,
Yes.
I like it. Here
Yes.
for it.
And
Go.
even if early voting somehow slips through the cracks, Jenna Griswold's count it 8 days early or whatever bullshit, gone. Big ruling right there. That is a big ruling. Yeah. So I'm actually going to read over that ruling. I saw that just before we went live here.
Yeah, I have not read it at all, so I definitely
that's an old post.
Mm.
That's an old post. How the hell did we not know this, Ash?
How old?
2024. I just saw that.
Ballots must be received by election day.
Yeah, this is from 2024.
I think we did cover that at the time that it happened. I thought so. So this is also just, be mindful of, this is a Fifth Circuit decision. So it's not an ultimate decision, and it will, has it been appealed? I don't know.
I apologize for the time on that.
Shame on Brian for giving everybody a 2024 story today.
I mean, if it's
getting all of our hopes up, getting all excited about it. What happened though? Did they appeal it?
That's a great question now.
What's the case?
There we go.
What's the case number?
It is case number 24-60395.
0395.
Republican National Committee, Mississippi Republican, James
24-60395.
60395, yes.
All for processing.
Why is that popping up in my feed today?
That's been happening to me a lot lately. Old stuff.
That's strange.
Not that old, not 2024 old, but like older.
That is definitely very strange. Oh, you know why? Because I think it's because Harrison Floyd reposted it. No, he didn't repost it, because if I hit the back button, it goes to him. But anyways, all right. So
the name of it?
It is Republican National Committee, Mississippi Republican Party, James Perry, Matthew Lamb versus Justin Wetzel et al. There's a lot of people. All right, well, we'll look into that. I haven't heard anything one way or the other about that, so I wonder if that ruling stood. So
all right, on March 14th, 2025, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit issued a ruling denying the petition for a rehearing en banc. The original appellate decision that the federal election day statute preempted the state law by allowing ballots to be received after election day was issued on October 25th, 2024. The case is recorded as decided. Apparently it stands.
Hell yeah. Okay. So then,
awesome.
Dude, that's a big one. Thank God I saw that,
The big one last October. Sure was. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. And I don't recall ever reading that. So we missed that one. Okay. So I
think we might have covered that when it happened.
We might have, but maybe I didn't think of it that way. I don't know. Maybe we didn't have President Trump yet, so we weren't as confident in any change actually
All right,
occurred.
Let's bring our guest on.
Yeah, so joining us, and some of you guys might scratch your head for a moment here and be like, wait, on why we vote? Yeah, we've got the one and only Colonel Towner joining us tonight. Colonel Towner, how you doing, ma'am?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good. And that was ma'am, not man. I know that sounded
like you said man.
It does kind of sound like man, but just the Marine and me. When
I just automatically hear ma'am, so we're good.
There you go.
Oh, we're so glad that you're able to be here, though, because there's so much going on, and it seems like it's all the CIA. So the fact that you were able to join us is awesome, and we really appreciate it.
Now you're singing my song.
Yeah.
So we've had two major, I don't know, developments. We'll call them developments over the last week. And, this is, of course, the Emerald Robinson, Patrick Byrne, adjacent op or not op, but thread. I'm going to call it a thread. I don't want to disparage anybody just yet, but there is a lot of concern with these. And then we had the Laura Logan podcast with Gary Bernstein and Ralph Pizzullo, which, by the way, I'm not
like related ops to me. I don't know if I'm the only one, but
so I have Pizzullo's book. I'm going to be reading it. It's my next book. Well, actually, Soft War's my next book, but I might have to jump it with this one now. G Money will be pissed, but whatever. And so it's
That's
very
about right.
strange. So Colonel Towner, you wrote kind of a response to that, but let's go through to the best of our memory and kind of summarize what the Logan podcast was today with Bernstein, or not today, but the other day with Bernstein and Pizzullo, and basically they outlined everything we already knew, but they put a new twist on it. If you want to kind of get into that, Colonel.
My big takeaway from my perspective, because you guys know what I've been researching the last 3 years, is that election interference has gone on for the last 80 years. And there's one group that has premiered preeminently in election interference, and that's the CIA. So as soon as I heard there was going to be a CIA agent talking about election interference, of course, my ears perked up. And there are some honest whistleblowers that are CIA, but generally they've had at least 1 or 2 attempts on their lives, and sometimes even lose their citizenship in the case of Philip Agee. So that's kind of your threshold of actual whistleblowers in the CIA, not the guy that goes on a podcast and will talk about everything else in the universe except the CIA and their role in election interference. And so a lot of the things that on the surface, and not going into any of the in-depth part of this, the stuff on the surface, none of it checks out. Literally none of it. The Cartel de la Sol, we're told that that's a current existing entity and they're behind all of this nefarious stuff. That's absolutely not true. And as a matter of fact, the Cartel de la Sol was created by 2 National Guard generals on the payroll of the CIA back a long time ago, like decades ago. So if you go back and you trace most of the nefarious stuff, to include drug trafficking that came out of Venezuela in the 80s and 90s, it's all tied to the CIA. I mean, there's a 60-minute clip of them shipping a ton of cocaine through the Cartel de la Sol into the United States, even though the DEA agent on station in Venezuela said that's against the law. The CIA facilitated it anyway under the guise that they were tracking the network back to Colombia.
Like Fast and Furious with the guns.
Exactly.
Colonel, is there a meaningful difference between Operation Gladio and Operation Condor aside from geography?
Zero. As a matter of fact, most of the players in Condor came originally from Gladio. You can Otto Scorzini, the P2 Masonic Lodge that all of the Operation Gladio in Italy was a member of, their only other location in the world was Argentina. And of course, we know Argentina was the recipient of a lot of the Nazis as a funnel point into. You find Nazis in Chile, you find them in Paraguay, you find them in Uruguay, you found them in Brazil, running all of the same experiments. The blonde twin experiment that went on in Brazil was done by a Nazi scientist that the OSS rat-lined out of Germany.
You mean, Colonel, you mean the Kirchners that they specifically mentioned in that podcast? That's not a true Argentinian name, Kirchner. that's not Spanish by any
dialect? Stretch of the imagination. And also,
hey man, it's as Spanish as Shine Bomb.
I was trying to remember. Yep, Mexico. There we go.
Touche. So again, and the other thing that I found the most outrageous of all of the things that they said that I found outrageous was the part where he was talking about Maduro running prison camps where they torture people. And they basically, I forget his exact words, but basically he made the allegation that they created them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What? What are you talking about? You did this in Vietnam. It was called the Phoenix Program. And literally, I'm watching this. I had to put, and I told CannCon earlier, I watched it twice and I have 3 pages of notes. Just with the most ridiculous garbage that came out of that man's mouth. The CIA basically patented
Which one, Bernstein or the other one? Which one was the one with the father? Because I read, I just read your thing.
So that's the author. And you talk about unforced errors. So, you know, I'm just thinking this guy's an author. You know, he's sitting over there, he adds a little bit. And then out of nowhere, he says, oh, yeah, my dad was a foreign service officer. We lived all over the world. And he used to come home, you know, when I was a little kid and tell me about his day. He told me all the stuff he did. And I offered him advice. And I'm thinking, this is such bullshit. And I'm like, foreign service officer, which is kind of collateral for CIA in the State Department. And I'm like, let me just do a search on where this guy, his official biography comes up. And he's in, you know, all of these different South American countries during Condor, where we're actively overthrowing governments, and his resume matches up exactly. Pre-regime change, post-regime change, pre-regime change. And as a foreign service officer, he's working in the embassy, which is where the Office of Public Safety was in all of these places. And the Office of Public Safety ran out of the USAID, was about 50% CIA. They used it as a cover. And they are the ones that taught all of the Operation Condor countries how to torture people. They were literally bringing in electrical leads in diplomatic pouches to electrocute people's private parts off of crank telephones. That's what the CIA did all over South America. They did it in Vietnam. The MI6 did it in Malaysia. This stuff happened all over the world every time the CIA, they did it in Iran. They taught the Savak how to do it. The Office of Public Safety taught the Shah Savak how to do it. And oh, by the way, that was General Schwarzkopf's dad that did that. So anyway, this has happened all over the world. And so I'm thinking to myself, these people think we're all stupid. They can have this conversation on air and they think we all are stupid and are not going to be able to go back and go, huh?
Well, so let's, you know, the funny thing to me, and me and Ashe were talking about this as well, is, you know, Ashe and I have been talking about election fraud for almost the better half of 5 years now. There was nothing in that interview in terms of the core election fraud claims that was new to me. I mean, we're reading this and then we're like, yeah, we knew that Smartmatic was, you know, Mujica and Piñate and Ndola. We knew that back in 2021, early 2021. You know, I read the Sequoia bankruptcy documents where they talked about the transfer of intellectual property from Smartmatic to Sequoia, and then Sequoia to an American version of Sequoia, and then, you know, then to eventually to Dominion, the Eric Holder forced divestiture of of Sequoia by ES&S, the eventual purchase, or that was Diebold, then Dominion buys Sequoia. Like nothing in any of this stuff is new. The one thing I texted you, Colonel,
Liberty vote to me, Brian.
Yeah, it's Liberty vote. Did you see? Did you see what Lindell's fund put out? That Liberty vote told them that they'll drop the lawsuit if they agree to be silent on their company.
What?
Yeah, check out Lindell's offensive fund, and Mike Lindell reposted it, and it's in quotes. So I'm imagining that's true. But
that is for folks listening, Lindell Legal Offense Fund.
Lindell Legal Offense Fund. But anyways, Colonel, you know, back to what I was saying there. None of it was new. They did neglect to mention Bizta R&D, which was, you know, the secondary firm that was parallel to Smartmatic that was used as the, you know, the research and development of all the software and stuff that eventually went into Smartmatic. And it was a very limited disclosure, in my opinion, as far as what they actually got into in that regard. But the whole thing was like, hey, this is Venezuelan, this is Maduro, this is Chavez, and all that. nothing to do. Like, the CIA is completely clear of this. In fact, we're the worst intelligence agency ever because all of this happened and nobody ever knew anything about it. We had no idea that this was going on. And I told Ashe this morning on Badlands Daily that they're getting absolutely desperate right now. President Trump has cut USAID, and all the other funding apparatuses. They're bombing the drug boats that are coming off the Venezuelan coast towards Dominican Republic to ship their product all over the globe. And they're going after the election fraud apparatus right now. And all of that is putting, in my opinion, the CIA on their heels. And so now they're rolling out these guys to say, hey, look, here's everything that happened. We had nothing to do with it, but here's all the information. Do with it what you will.
So what's interesting to me is, can you imagine we spend hundreds of billions of dollars that we know about of our tax. Now, I'm not even talking about the USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, and all the money that funnels money to the CIA or their drug money. We spend hundreds of billions of dollars on the CIA. So we're supposed to believe in, let's just go back to the 90s. Because if you follow the timeline.
Sorry, hang on a second. By that, you mean what's trackable, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
What because Congress appropriates on the above line, not the covert line.
Right.
Okay. So in the late 1990s, supposedly these three gentlemen that eventually leave Venezuela and come to Miami as expats, which is another radar for me. But anyway, they're developing this election fraud capability. At the same time, the CIA has all of the senior people in the government and in the National Guard, Cartel del Sol, on their payroll, right? There is Italians operating Sicilians from the mafia in Italy that are running the drugs in Venezuela with the Colombians. So they're bringing in the heroin and the Colombians are bringing in the cocaine, all while the CIA and the DEA are living in Venezuela. So literally every kind of chaos is going on until Chavez gets elected. And as soon as Chavez gets elected, all of that stops. These guys have to relocate to South Florida just in time for, as you pointed out earlier, the hanging Chad fiasco. Okay, so we're either spending hundreds of billions of dollars around the world for absolutely nothing because it's all happening all around them and they can't see it in Venezuela in the 1990s. They're developing software to steal elections. And I just find it ironic that the organization that has interfered in more elections 400 of them. I read a book that said there has been over 400 attempted coups that all started off with election meddling. At least 90 of them were eventually successful, to include assassinating heads of state. So you've got the machine that meddles in every single election sitting in the country that is developing the eventual software that gets deployed after the hanging Chad, which I think was an operation as well. And then they locate to Miami and sell up their machines to solve the problem that they created.
The hanging Chad thing is, we were talking about this, and there was a news broadcast that's resurfaced recently from that time frame where they had a panel of people that worked for the company that was making the paper for the ballots, the ballots that you punched in. And, these people are saying that this is the first time that since they've been working there, that the paper was a much, much, much heavier stock.
Correct.
Making it more difficult for the hanging Chad. And you get the feeling, and Ashe and I talk about this all the time.
Making it so that the more difficult to punch through the paper, resulting in a hanging Chad. I think you shorthanded that a little bit for the audience.
And we were told the whole time that it was just because the system was getting so dirty, right? There were so many papers and dust build up, and that
it was old.
Right. and it wasn't able to punch through. And then, this is what ushered in electronic voting machines in 2001,
Which were
following.
ready to go. They were ready to go. It wasn't like they had to build a solution to the problem. The industry that Hava gave birth to was ready to go at the time that legislation was signed.
And Colonel Towner, in your piece, you said that Smartmatic was organized in 2000, which was before the Hanging Chad. Well, yeah, it was before the Hanging Chad. And so, for this to have been developed in order to replace the Hanging Chad,
the problem that they're going to have in 6 months.
Bingo. And
kind of like the Patriot Act got written right before 9/11.
And well, it was written actually, we didn't know. I didn't know this until Codex 9/11 that it had been written long before then, but gets reintroduced.
Yeah.
But going back to the Hanging Chad, so they create Smartmatic a year before the Hanging Chad debacle, and all of that came to settled, and they're ready to go. They're ready to roll it out, and I kind of get the same feeling with what we're seeing here, that we're going to get this mass expose on the machines, but it's being done to roll out the next generation of voting. And I don't know, God forbid it's blockchain. Me and Ashe have talked about blockchain on this show before. Great for anything other than voting.
Blockchain, ranked choice, mobile voting. We've got so many solutions waiting in the wings. None of them are good. We don't actually need them.
That's what I think this whole thing is about. That's why I would call it an operation. They are trying to get out ahead of the DNI and President Trump's election interference exposure. They're crafting a narrative, and you're going to see more of it, because they want to get ahead of what they know is going to be unequivocal, real evidence presented. And the only solution that you can draw from the real evidence is paper ballots. That's not what they want, to your point, Brian. I think they're crafting a narrative to go in a different direction, and they're going, yes. And that's why I do call this an operation. It has, to use the CIA's own terms, it has all the hallmarks of an operation.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, you wouldn't, like you said earlier, this guy coming out and saying this, and he's been saying this, Bernstein's been saying this stuff for a while now. I mean, this isn't like the last month or 2 months or so. He's made podcasts before where, he sat down and kind of said the same thing, and it didn't really catch. This was pre-Trump round 2 or round 3, depending on how you look at it. He said this before, and it never really caught. And now all of a sudden, that everybody wants so badly to get this resolved, it's like the people are just willing to jump on anything. I have not seen a single shred of evidence to support anything that anybody is saying in this whole CIA, Maduro and Venezuela ran all this stuff, and the CIA had no clue, and they were just innocent bystanders. And let's throw Cuba into this as well, because now all of a sudden, Cuba's like the best intelligence apparatus in the entire world right now. It's a joke. Like, did everybody like miss the Kennedy era? And what happened back then? I don't know.
So and that's what I found fascinating. So nowhere does he mention, like I said, it's like casting these little stones. So Venezuela created the black site program, which they didn't. And one of the other points we've not covered yet, you notice that he said that basically Venezuela owns the entire country of Spain, their entire government, everything. Well, that, again, because I know how they do this, sparked me to go look for what of those 3 people has to do with Spain. And you immediately find out that Spain was trying to indict his teammate, that Rodell guy, in Spain for, nefarious behavior there. And so, of course, they're using this forum to kind of clear all of them up. You've got the CIA, and the CIA is telling you it's all this, which means you need to be looking at the CIA. And then this guy is telling you, oh, it's Spain and Venezuela, because Spain's actually indicting him for his nefarious things. And then, of course, they tell you that Cuba is running Venezuela. And for me, what I find most interesting about the Cuba angle of this is there were actual Cubans in Venezuela, but not like back in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, not Castro Cubans, Cuban exiles trained by the CIA that was there running drugs with their Costa Rica, Colombia, Somoza, Nicaraguan kind of thing going on. So they like to use Cuba. And that's another thing to Ashe's point about Operation Condor. If you go back, and I did the coups in all of the South American countries collectively, and right out of the chute in every book, it was because Cuba was there and they were going to go communist. Oh, it was because Cuba was there and they were going to go communist. And I got to thinking, Cuba has been very convenient. Very, very, and let me just put this out there. There is only one president of a country in the last 80 years that had over 400 attempted assassinations on him alone, and not one of them was successful, and that was Castro. Because if you don't have Castro sitting in Cuba, you would have never been able to overthrow Chile. You would have never been able to overthrow Guatemala. You would have never been able to overthrow Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, everybody but Belize. It's a long list. Because each and every time the CIA said, it's because we can't have another Castro.
So Cuba sounds a lot like Russia. Like the big bad boogeyman, they're the reason for, right?
Yes, I have to do this over here because I don't want this over there.
Yeah.
And I just, at the end of the day, when I got done with all of this, because that's the reason why we went throughout Asia, in the Korean War, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, you name them. It was all because we couldn't have the Soviet Union. We couldn't, the whole domino effect and all that other stuff. And the funny thing about it was, especially with Korea, I mean, that was only a few years after World War II. The Soviet Union still had not even recreated their industrial base. They had 25 million people killed. It's not like they were a threat, but we had to go fight a whole nother war just to make sure that the Korean Peninsula wasn't going to be unified and have one election, because they knew the guy up north was going to be elected and they didn't like him. So I just find it convenient that we've had, and of course, if you go back into the creation of communism to begin with, it was funded by London and Wall Street. And so you have these convenient boogeymen throughout time. And when they use them to make their argument, to me, you've automatically lost any credibility. We are not talking about Cuba. And for you to then use Cuba as, and that's a key thing for me for CIA. This is inbred in them. Everything is blamed on Russia, China, or Cuba. Period.
And they're countries that you have very little access to. Like we can't go to Cuba. We're not allowed to visit Cuba
And verify the story.
And verify anything. It's also, interesting. We have the wet foot, dry foot policy. We in Florida know this policy very well, where Cuban refugees, if they make it 90 miles on their floating 55-gallon drums and their 57 Cadillacs that they have drums all around, if they make it over here, they get to stay. That it's not lost on me that we have that type of policy. Ashe, you're muted. I know you're trying to jump in here, but you're muted for some
I
reason.
just said the magic soil doctrine.
Yeah, the magic soil. So I
do want to say Texas Jules gifted 5 subscriptions to Badlands. Thank you so much. Those disappear. So I want to make sure.
Thank you, Texas Jules. So one of the things I want to go back to was during that podcast, Bernstein was talking about the cartels having $2.7 trillion in money available, assets, I guess. And also downplaying the cartels in Mexico and saying, those are just the drivers, I think was the exact quote that he used, calling them drivers. Maduro just came out. the other day and said, hey, 85% of the cartel's money is in American banks.
That's true.
And that is very concerning because we have all sorts of, methods of detecting money laundering and that type of thing. But apparently that just kind of goes through like nothing ever happened. The thing I found most fascinating about your article, Colonel, is that Chavez, before Chavez took power in Venezuela, became, the dictator.
The elected head of state.
Yeah, like Venezuela was already fucked. It was already a hugely corrupt country. If you want to talk a little bit more about that.
So, and that's kind of to my point. You had the CIA with the Cartel de la Sol. You had the CIA running drugs from Colombia. I mean, in that 60-minute clip, it actually says they know it's coming from Colombia. 98% of the cocaine that reaches America comes from Colombia, not any other place. And the one place that we have one of the biggest military operations and CIA is in Colombia. And somehow for the last 40 years, they've missed that.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're wanting me to believe that one of the actual drivers, which is Venezuela and Mexico, one of the drivers, to use his terminology, has more money. Now, you know what a supply chain is. The wholesaler doesn't make more money than the original company. So he wants you to believe that Venezuela, who doesn't actually produce very much drugs, if at any, depending on what article you read, the actual coca plant is grown in Bolivia and Peru. They sell the leaves to Colombia. They don't make a lot of money. Do they have some? Yeah. The labs are all in Colombia, all of them. And to your point about when you talk about the control of the networks and the money being here, let me explain to people who've not heard this, because I was dumbfounded when I found this out. There is an approved network. You have to operate within the approved network. And that network is dictated by the CIA and other intelligence officials. Like MI6, they play a big role in this. I focus on the CIA because I'm American. If you operate outside that approved network, you will be assassinated. And Escobar found that out firsthand because he was the lesser bad of bad. He was they actually referred to him in Colombia as Robin Hood because he didn't want to play the game of investing all of the drug profits into the U.S. real estate market, which is one of their primary money laundering opportunities. But that was required if you're going to be approved as a cartel boss. So not only did he not want to invest in U.S. real estate, he wanted to build hospitals, schools, and houses in Colombia because he grew up poor. He also didn't want to use the pre-approved internal domestic network the CIA had already blessed, which was the Cuban exiles. So he comes to Miami and he starts killing all of them. And he starts installing all of his Colombian drug networking in Miami by killing all of the Cuban exiles. And literally, if you go back to the 80s, there's like dead bodies everywhere. They were finding them in the rivers, everywhere, like literally assassinations everywhere.
Yep.
Well, that's not allowed. So they assassinated Escobar. And so if you understand how closely organized and how you're not allowed to operate outside of the pre-approved CIA directives, you find out very quick that there's not 2 point whatever trillion dollars sitting in Venezuela, because that's not how the game is played. Absolutely not. Just like the Cartel de la Sol is still not in charge of Venezuela, that was a creation of the CIA. And once Chavez took power, everything about the CIA and U.S. oligarchs was completely outlawed in Venezuela, which is why, to me, everything that he said focused on Venezuela was basically not true.
So, Gordon Ghost here on Badlands, he's a believer that Maduro is either cooperating in some form or fashion with this, or he's not the bad guy that he's painted as in, American media and all that. And to support this, he points at, a lawsuit that he brought here in Florida, Maduro did, and it was unsuccessful. But, Gordon says if you go back and look at all the people that are named in this lawsuit and the people that are subjects of this lawsuit, a lot of those people ended up being arrested by authorities. And, that's kind of like a soft disclosure, shameless plug, a soft disclosure to put this information out there.
Right.
And that it's a way for Maduro to kind of operate without being fully blown. Hey, I'm working with the Americans in this regard. So, when I look at that and I look at the way that, even in that podcast, I mean, they were on their knees for Maria Machado. And, just like she's the strongest man in Venezuela as a woman. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, man.
So do you know her history? And that the USAID, the Sumatra or whatever however you pronounce it, organization that she set up with Guaido back in the day, that was responsible for the riots and the murders and all of the chaos that was going on around the Reformation election that they had. And which was unconstitutional, but they forced it. Every organization she was affiliated with was funded by the USAID, and the same thing with Guaido. She is a product of the USAID pipeline, and the whole fake coup that Pompeo and John Bolton created in 2019 and somehow suckered Trump into recognizing Guaido. Let me explain to you, if you don't know the ins and outs of this. Guaido, and this is the thing that just blows everything they say out of the water. The opposition parties, there were 4 main opposition parties to Maduro, and Guaido led one of those 4. When the 4 won the majority in their National Assembly, which is basically our Congress, Guaido was elected president of that assembly. He never actually ran for president at all. So by him being elected president of the assembly, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, along with Elliott Abrams, and I'll get back to him in a second, anointed basically the Speaker of the House president, because they said the election that elected him to Speaker of the House was a fraudulent election because it elected Maduro too.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're all fraudulent elections.
That's how ridiculous this entire thing
is.
The
story is ridiculous, certainly. Yeah.
Well,
but interestingly enough, Elliott Abrams is the same guy that ran Iran-Contra for Reagan and is a convicted felon that after running drugs for George H.W. Bush as vice president during Iran-Contra, George H.W. Bush, the president, pardoned him.
Sure.
And Bolton hired this guy into the Trump White House to run the coup against Venezuela in 2019. So
you mentioned
they have to be cooing this government and they have to be using USAID to prop up Mercado. Yeah, no, thank you.
You mentioned it. So hold on, Ash. I have to do it.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places.
Excellent. Colonel, I asked Brian this morning. In terms of, so I find it encouraging that Jake Sullivan's wife and a sitting U.S. senator and the Congress, the clandestine Congress people are the face of a lot of the things that are happening, that they have to be so out front, similar to some of these other operations, people who are, former CIA, which I don't personally think exists. I mean, certainly you can go dormant, but if they call you up, you're going back in. You're never former, right? I find it encouraging that so many highly placed assets are out in front and very visible in this. What's your thought on that?
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It says to me that there's two things. There's a level of boldness on one hand, and also a level of desperateness on the other hand. And that actually plays in our favor.
Yeah, and when you think about the resources being cut, the level, the different exposure and disclosure, softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands, that's been happening. The boldness doesn't necessarily make sense, right? Except that there's the desperation. There is maybe they're running out of options.
But it's like a bully.
Mm.
You know, that's what I mean about the boldness of it. Yeah, there's nothing behind them. But at this point, they have to appear much bolder than what is warranted. And that's frankly what I got out of this whole video. Because literally, if you know anything about CIA operations, you could discredit every single thing the man said. And that's not even counting the election part of it. Just all of the pieces that he threw out there, none of it holds water.
Did you and we'll talk about this, because I was going to actually see if we could get you on sit rep, but maybe we'll talk about it a little bit here and we'll rehash it with Alpha if we can get you on sit rep next week or something. But did you see Slotkin's I think it was Svetlana Lakova put this out from Slotkin like a month ago, talking about the National Guard? Have you seen this clip?
Yes.
Let's play this clip.
As a CIA officer, the idea that intelligence officers could be asked to target Americans turns my stomach, and it would shift us into a modern-day surveillance state. Turning the federal government against Trump's enemies goes hand in hand with his use of force in American cities, both federal law enforcement and the military. As of today, the president has attempted to deploy more than 7,000 National Guard members across 5 cities, including right here in Washington. In August, the administration ordered the creation of 2 new National Guard units, a standing quick reaction force that can deploy anywhere in the country, and then separately, National Guard units in all 50 states focused on quelling so-called civil disturbances. At this point, Trump has been very clear about his intent. At Quantico, speaking as commander-in-chief, he instructed his military brass to use cities as, quote, training grounds. And many times, he's floated the idea of invoking the Insurrection Act so that military units can raid, detain, and arrest Americans. The president has already deployed ICE and other federal law enforcement to these same cities across America. In some cases, these federal officers are playing fast and loose with their tactics, which sooner or later could lead to a deadly escalation. The videos out of Chicago are shocking. Federal agents pulling their weapons on highways, firing tear gas into neighborhoods right before a Halloween parade, injuring and even killing civilians. Many are masked, not wearing uniforms, and driving unmarked cars. For those of us who served abroad, it feels like another country. And it's only a matter of time before things get worse. By my estimation, we're about 2 weeks away from a bloody incident that spirals out of control. And this is just the kind of incident that Trump wants to justify more force coming in.
Roll her ass up. Why the hell is she still walking around breathing free air?
What was the first phrase she said?
As a former CIA.
No, she didn't use former.
Oh, as a CIA officer.
CIA,
yeah.
She
didn't use former.
Yeah,
she didn't use former.
I'll pull it up again. We'll play the first.
As a CIA officer, the idea that
snap.
So I mean,
I learned to listen to them to what their words actually mean, not what they're projecting.
Just starting that out and saying, as a CIA officer, I don't want to see a surveillance state. The fuck you don't. Are you kidding me?
Hang on.
She doesn't want to see one controlled by Trump.
Bingo.
I want to make sure this is really clear to the audience. That video is from almost a month ago.
A month ago.
So Whiskey Peddler says 2 weeks. It sounds like they're planning something. So she said that almost a month ago. She invoked not just Trump and the Insurrection Act in 2 weeks to a violent kind of thing. She talked about the National Guard. And what did we see happen over this holiday?
In the meantime, they do their military make sure that you're following only lawful orders video. So this is escalating just the way they want it to. But they are projecting their escalation on Trump.
It's not a prediction, it's a plan.
I
Correct.
told Ashe this morning, I predicted that 5 hours before the shooting happened. I put out that post saying this is their goal. This is the plan. And, you know, this is where, you know, you get a little conspiratorial, but, you know, you've got this guy, this Afghan 0 unit member, that the stories on him that are coming out just don't make sense. They said he's been working for them for 10 years. Well, he was 25 when he, you know, fled to the United States. That would have meant he was 15 working in the Afghan army. I've personally, and I've seen hundreds of Afghan soldiers. I've never seen one that was anywhere near 15 years old. They're all, in fact, they're typically much older than your average American service member. You know, these guys, you know, they all have full beards, you know, they're up there. But the idea that this guy was a 0 unit operator trained with the Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6, CIA, paid by the CIA. Even this morning, we read the New York Times article where the New York Times is like, oh, yeah, the president of Afghanistan wanted to deploy the 0 units to help at the Abbey Gate, but they had to ask the CIA for permission. Like that to me was whatever.
Yeah.
But for this guy to drive across Washington State, have a plan, and his plan was to shoot a guardsman in broad daylight with a .357 Magnum. Somebody, and the other thing I told, and I don't know if you can comment on this, but in Afghan culture, I was telling Ashe this morning, in Afghan culture, the only thing more valuable to an Afghan man than his sons, his legacy, is Allah himself. That's the only thing. Having 5 boys is a blessing bestowed upon him by Allah himself and whatever. So the thought that this guy would drive across the country and risk his wife and 5 sons fending for themselves in America by themselves in order to take out some sort of a vendetta against the military that he worked 10 years for, somebody might want to check this guy and see if they threatened to kill those sons or something along those lines, because none of this is making sense with this guy.
Or the MK Ultra aspect of it.
Yes. And
so,
that is, yes.
Yes, at 15. So the other part of this, for me, that is a pattern, and it's not conspiracy theory. This is actual factual evidence. Throughout all of these coups, when and Afghanistan was overthrowing the government. I mean, that's the whole thing. The Taliban, we've all been brainwashed to believe they're the communists of the Soviet Union, when in fact it was the Taliban that outlawed the opium production, got it down to almost 0, and also outlawed men having sex with little boys. So yeah, we got to get rid of them. They're the bad guys. So after 9/11, we go into Afghanistan. Now, we all know that bin Laden was on the CIA payroll as well. They could have put him anywhere. They put him in Afghanistan because that's where they wanted to go to restart the opium production. So the pattern that evolves out of all of this, whether it was Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, any of the Condor things, Cuba, when we go in and attempt to overthrow the government, we have people working inside. So in Afghanistan, we had all of the warlords that we were in bed with that were going against the Taliban to get them out of the government. Okay. So in those scenarios, those people like this guy cannot stay once the government that the CIA has propped up for all those years, once it goes down, they can't stay in the country. So that you have to take them out somewhere. And in the case of Cuba, that's what I refer to as the Cuban exiles that came into Miami that were all trained as terrorists by the CIA to go attack Cuba. And so then what do you do after you've attacked them, like for the last 20 years and they're not going anywhere? Oh, well, we've got these trained guys. So while we're planning attacks on Cuba, we'll go take them to Guatemala. We'll take them to El Salvador. We'll take them to Nicaragua. We'll take them to Costa Rica. And they train assassins in all those places. They were in Colombia. We put Cuban exiles in Angola during the Reagan administration to try to overthrow that government. So they are deployable assets. While they may focus on their own country, they're deployable assets. The Mujahideen that the CIA created in Afghanistan was deployed to Chechnya when they wanted the Muslim uprising in Chechnya to aggravate the hell out of the Soviet Union. They were deployed to Bosnia. That's what created the whole Muslim radical uprising in Bosnia. So they're very useful tools. But in the case of many of them, when they're not on a mission, they're here in the United States. That should scare the hell out of everybody. We have trained assassins living in all of our neighborhoods that used to work for the CIA. And they will put them in any community. They don't care. And at some point, they're used, just like Gladio, as domestic terrorists. One of the Cuban, well, two of them actually, of the Cuban exiles, they were involved in Watergate. They were involved in the JFK assassination. They were involved in the RFK assassination. The Cuban exiles planted a car bomb in Washington, D.C. and blew up a car that killed an American aide to the former Chilean ambassador to the United States. Killed him, killed his aide in Washington, D.C., Cuban exile. So they are used all the time. We just don't know it here because we don't pay attention to it. You just write it off as some random Cuban, but when you start researching these people, just like this Afghanistan guy, they're tied to the CIA. So that's not conspiracy at all. That is an actual pattern that has played out over the course of the last 70 years when they conduct these operations and then have to extradite some of their players so they don't get murdered by the legitimate government after they come back in power.
Yeah, and the timing of it, you know, the Slotkin deployment, nothing happened. The month ago deployment, nothing happened in those 2 weeks. Nothing happened in the week following it. So they put out their message as a, you know, a dog whistle. And then all of a sudden you get this shooting less than 24 hours later. And, you know, I mean, at that point,
from a guy who worked for the CIA.
Who worked for the CIA, you know, a top tier, a tier 1 operator in Afghan standards. I don't necessarily think that, I don't think that's on the same standards as our tier 1 operators, but still smart enough to know that if you want to pull something like that off, you don't do it with a 357 Magnum in broad daylight in Washington, D.C. when the National Guard's already there. And then you get the video, right? Or
unless you want a suicide mission, which they botched.
And
it wasn't a suicide mission though, because the guy
that's what
lived.
I'm saying. If they wanted one, they botched it.
Exactly. And what do we get? We get the photo, an overhead shot of the guy being loaded onto an ambulance. And I said this on Daily as well. He's butt-ass naked, which is an absolute humiliation to an Afghan man to be shown naked like that, or any Muslim man to be shown naked like that. And that is a dog whistle. There's 10,000, according to Rolling Stone. So again, another CIA front. But according to Rolling Stone, there's 10,000 of these zero unit guys out there who are now watching this on the news and seeing one of their comrades from a foreign country being humiliated by the country that they're in right now. And you know, I mean, are these people, are they living good lives? Do they have nothing to lose by turning into, you know, turning to jihad, to, you know, for their religious, whatever the case might be? There's a lot to this that is very, very concerning to me. And I think that we're going to, I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's a possibility we see more of these types of events. And I think that was part of the plan, was for the seditious six to sow doubt in our military's minds so that they cannot respond to something like this. And then the shooting of them is not only to make them question the orders, but question whether or not they're going to be safe going into this.
Correct.
It's all, this is all a very obvious op to me.
And let me also add that this is how nefarious the CIA is and why it has to go away. There is no way the government will ever know for sure that that guy wasn't still on the CIA payroll, because the CIA has front companies that act as payers to their off the book assets.
Sure.
Did you catch the thing that they said today during their, or yesterday, maybe it was yesterday during their press conference about the FBI searches that they executed? They said properties, plural. So this guy had an apartment in Bellingham, Washington, but they also had at least one other property in San Diego. San Diego's not cheap. You're not buying property in San Diego for cheap. I was just out there at Camp Pendleton driving around with my buddy who's still in the Marine Corps, and we're looking at all these properties, and we're like, I wonder how much that one is. 3.4 million. I wonder how much that one is.
My aunt lives out there. I know how expensive it is.
Yeah, I mean, California. My brother-in-law lives out in San Francisco, and he's got a house a quarter the size of mine on a third of the property of mine, and it's over $1 million.
Yes.
So how is this guy who's driving for Amazon, as reported, able to afford this condo or this apartment in Bellingham, 5 kids, a wife, and also at the same time has property in San Diego, which it's not lost on me, the number of military installations in San Diego, especially Coronado and our Navy SEALs, which means that CIA is also operating out of there most likely.
Oh, 100%. The CIA has a very large presence in Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, they had infiltrated, I'll use that word, although it was with the knowledge of the Los Angeles County Police Department, as the Sheriff's Department, as well as LAPD. They had CIA assets in those departments and have for decades. Whether they have them today, I don't know. But there's story after story of that actually happening.
So in the past few days, we have the National Guard shooting, which appears to tie to the Seditious Six video. We have the Laura Logan interview a few days ago, and now the Emerald Robinson thread that appears to tie, tightly. I think the assertion in Emerald's thread is that Burnson is with Patrick Byrne, and the one person they haven't named, unless it was named today, I haven't looked, are the 3 Musketeers who saved the 2024 presidential election from election fraud. My problem with that narrative is that the premise for it is dummy Trump. Oh, Trump, really didn't know, and the team really didn't know. In October 2024, they finally got the information, and Elon Musk saved the day. Eat every last dick. I don't believe that. But the key that's consistent across all of these ops that are being played on us over the past week is that the CIA is the good guy. It seems to be
Always.
that there is a CIA is good guy. And it reminds me, you mentioned something, I don't remember exactly how you said it, Colonel, but in the beginning when you were talking about this, reminded me of that Sarah lady that kept talking about there's going to be terrorist attacks on the U.S. soil, and we know it because there's vests and shit and all of that, right? And but the CIA, but the good guys in the CIA are going to stop it. So here's my question to you. I asked Brian this morning. Chris Paul has the good twin, evil twin theory, right? That in every government, there's a deep state faction and there's ostensible white hats or good guys. I think level of competence and capability varies depending on what country. Possibly within the institutions as well. There's good guys and there's deep state. When it comes to the Central Intelligence Agency, do you entertain any idea that there is or any possibility that there is a good twin, evil twin dynamic going on inside of the Central Intelligence Agency?
So actually, I've given this a lot of thought. So I have, it's a mixed bag. I don't believe it's that black and white. So there are people at a lower level that are given specific tasks with a need to know that has no clue what all of this is. So if I go to work every day, and again, if you come out of the military, like if I would have went to work for the CIA immediately upon retirement, not having done any of this research, I would have never thought they were nefarious. And so if I would have gotten an analyst job and I went in and did my job every day and produced the products based on what they were telling me to do, I wouldn't see all of this. Now, would you maybe hear some of the stuff in the break room? Possibly, but they're paranoid about security at the CIA. I don't know if you've read anything about all of it is crazy paranoia there.
Fucked with everyone in the world, Colonel. So I would imagine they have good reason.
The actual phone book that they produced for a very long period of time rotated people's name in and out of the phone book because they didn't want everybody's name to be in any edition of the phone book. I mean, they have segregated lunchrooms so that the covert side doesn't eat with the overt side so that they don't see their faces. So could you be there and not be nefarious? Absolutely. Because they operate very much on a need to know. If you're above mid-level, absolutely not.
So
because
that's
of
the question,
interface.
though, because it's not just are there good people inside of the institution, because obviously there are. Not everybody inside is read in on something, right?
But
But
not
in
at
a
this level
command,
and above.
in an ability to affect change, and an ability to make decisions, is there a good, white hat, black hat battle going on? You say no.
No,
Okay. I tend
because
to agree
at
with you.
this level
On this
and above,
institution, certainly.
if now I would say I would have a different opinion of that with my experience in the military. But in the CIA, and again, I've never been in the CIA. I've spent 3 years, 12 hours a day reading about them every single day. This level and above. So you have to understand that the guy that sits here, other than the current one, the guy that sits here comes from here.
Right.
And the guy that sits here comes from here. And the guy that sits here comes from here. Well, if you're one of those people that kind of is a goody two shoes, you're not ever going to make it here. So you're not going to make it here or here. And that's so when Brennan was the CIA, Brennan only promoted to the next executive level the people that were as corrupt as him. When Alan Dulles was the chief, he only hired corrupt people to work for him. They all hired corrupt people to work for him. When you get down to the middle to lower section in the analyst area, you need so many of them, you don't have to be as picky. But when you get to the GS 13 level, 14 level, you're not going to ever be there if they have any doubt that you may be a good guy. You're not going to allow to be there.
That's unfortunate. And then you look at, the guy we're getting the information from, and he's a 2.5 decade veteran of the agency.
Correct.
24 years.
And where was he on 9/11? He was the guy that went into Afghanistan to redo the opium fields.
Yeah. Which was
and
a huge.
He's the guy is telling you that all the drugs are coming from Venezuela.
Right. And that's a great point. And we've talked about this on SITREP before, the poppy trade and how, US wars tend to follow, poppy and other drugs. Right. Exactly. And
Golden Triangle, Golden Crescent, Crystal Triangle. Bingo.
Yeah, Colonel, the other institution that I have kind of the same reaction to is, because the global consultancies and the audit firms, right? The international syndicate of globalist corporations, there are great people that work inside of those entities, inside of those companies, brilliant people doing important work in all of the different domains of life, right? Healthcare, innovations in different product stacks and all sorts of things. But once you get above a certain level and you're in that decision-making capacity to drive where the business is going to go and where the focus and resources and thought leadership and change efforts and service offerings are going to go, you got to be in that club. There's no question. And I mean, a lot of those firms have been, I think, credibly painted as CIA fronts. So
there's a lot of them that are, but to me in this syndicate, they control the CIA. They're not CIA fronts. The level of international syndicate in my mind are the Rockefellers, the Whitneys, the old money, the real old money, not the things that you see, there's some new blood there, but the controllers are the old money. And they're the people behind the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Mellon Foundation, the Carnegie Institute for War, although it's supposed to be peace, all of those entities. And to your point, they're secret societies like the Skull and Bones, like Scroll and Key. They belong to secret societies, both in London and in the United States. And War Hamster Brady and I have done a series of a whole ton of shows on Skull and Bones. We're just finishing up with Scroll and Key, and it is remarkable the intermarriages, the overlap, and who pulls the strings. And so these people, and quite frankly, I found that out in my research of Operation Gladio. Oh, the guys that own Anaconda Mining and PepsiCo and ITT were the guys that went to Nixon and said, hey, Salvador Allende is nationalizing all of his assets down there, and he's going to cut us out of the money. So we need him gone. And what the CIA do? They assassinated him after they interfered in the election. So this story goes on and on. You know, United Fruit is one that everybody likes to use because they were the guys behind the Guatemala coup. Big Ag was behind the Brazil coup. So you can go on and on. The Colombian, one of the fascinating things about the whole drug thing, I've started referring to them as chemical weapons now, because they're not actually drugs. They're chemical weapons. If you understand how the coca leaf turns into cocaine, there's like 99% chemicals and 1% of coca leaf. And so it's a chemical weapon. And
but also in how it's brought in and how it's brought in and how it's deployed, it's also a chemical weapon. It's not being brought in because people have it. We have a demand for these kinds of drugs and blah, blah, blah. It's brought in intentionally. People get addicted intentionally. And as Brian and I discussed this morning, oftentimes, you know, people that are doing drugs, right? They think they're buying a certain street drug and really they're buying a lethal dose of fentanyl. That's happening in our country every single day. That is chemical weapons. It's an act of war, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did not know the extent to which chemicals were involved until I got to the whole Latin America Crystal Triangle. I mean, I understood there's a lot of chemicals involved in heroin as well. And it is done in a lab, most of them disguised as pharmaceutical companies, ironically enough, throughout Taiwan and Sicily and blah, blah, blah. So when I got to the cocaine part of it, though, in Colombia, when they were setting up the labs in the 70s down there, do you know who was supplying all the chemicals?
No.
DuPont,
Oh.
Dow.
Yeah.
Every American chemical company was supplying the chemicals to Colombia knowingly for the production of cocaine. And eventually, several years later, somebody got that information to Congress and they said, you know, we probably ought to not be doing that. And they passed a law that prohibited them to sell those chemicals direct. Well, I read in one of the books that a lot of them, just like with what we did during World War II, right before World War II, where we set up joint ventures with IB Farben and all of those that didn't get bombed in Germany, like with Ford and all of those, that the chemical company set up joint ventures with China. And now we're told all the chemicals going to they come from China. And I've not ever sat down and did all the financial research in order to trace those back to DuPont and Dow and some of the major chemical companies here in the United States. But there is material that is written that suggests that is in fact the case. So I view all of that as a chemical weapon attack against our population.
I want to I'm checking something real quick, but I want to kind of tie this as we start to run out of time here. I want to tie it back into the election aspect of this. And, you know, just to be clear, I know a lot of people, we're not attacking Emerald or Laura Logan for platforming these people and putting this story out there. I mean, they're putting the information out there. You guys can use your own discernment to determine whether or not you want to buy into it. Emerald has put out some of the greatest election content over the last 4 years. Not some of the greatest. She's put out great content over the last 4 years. So has Laura Logan. You know, we're not trying to disparage these people, but they gave Burns. And to be fair, if Bernstein reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to come on Why We Vote," I'd come on in. We're not going to ask, you know, cookie cutter questions, and we're going to.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We're not. You can't approve our questions. We're going to ask you what we're going to ask you, but in a second.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We would have them on. The one thing, as I'm listening to this podcast, you know, they did a lot of attacking on, you know, Trump officials currently in Radcliffe. They went after Radcliffe. They did say Gabbard was doing a good job because she kind of took 40% of ODNI and cleared out, which, you know, Colonel, when you had dinner over here, I told you it reminds me of Carter, when Carter cleared 30% of the CIA, and then they absolutely destroyed Carter's presidency as a result of doing that.
He took 100% of the covert guys.
Yeah. And so when I see all this happening, and by the way, one of the biggest red flags to me that they completely downplay as evidence that it's not Venezuelan cartels and it's not, there is an intelligent aspect to this, is Lord Malik Brown's involvement in the SGO. I mean, how are you going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, Lord Malik Brown, he's a partner in the SGO, he's a co-founder of SGO Smartmatica and all this stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, but it's totally the Venezuelans. Because yeah, London loves Venezuela on paper.
No,
that
really,
was
we were the good guys. Really, we were just trying to save elections. Really, but we're not going to talk about the CIA's role in election fraud. We're not going to talk about the U.S. companies' roles in election fraud. We're not going to talk about how many people in the U.S. government have been obstructing, and the U.S. media and the U.S. institutions and the U.S. professional domains where all the experts are, like cybersecurity, who have been absolutely fucking silent when it comes to these issues. We're not going to talk about that. It's the Venezuelans.
Yep.
Well, and I was dumbfounded by where all Smartmatic had moved its headquarters, only to end up in London.
Oh, well, yeah, eventually London, but it originated in Boca with Venezuelan Americans.
Yes. In the same expat community that all of the people were involved in the Guaido fake government in the United States that basically stole Citco from Venezuela, that same community belongs to the same organizations. But it also was temporarily headquartered in the Netherlands and the Philippines on its way to the UK.
But so here's kind of my point. And, you know, as there is this op going on, you know, trying to split MAGA, you know, MAGA versus America first and all this stuff, and trying to disparage Trump and get people off the Trump train, whatever. And a lot of the people that you're seeing in this op here are specifically pointing to his inaction following the 2020 election. You know, Ratcliffe is one of the people that they pointed out specifically, saying he's got to go. He had to have been in on this, and blah, blah, blah. I think he was in on it, but not in the aspect that they're talking about him being in on it. And to your point, Colonel, you said Ratcliffe is the one guy who didn't go up that chain in CIA to get to where he's at right now. And that, to me, is why if you're a CIA lifer, if you're somebody that's former CIA, you know, blowing the whistle on all this stuff as if they're getting some classified dump when all they're getting is the dump, not the classified. It's like, and this is something me and Ash talk about all the time. This is the way that it had to be. And you know, people are overlooking that idea that President Trump knew exactly what happened in 2020. He knew how to stop it in 2024, or at least get past it in 2024, now to effectuate actual change. And you're seeing absolute panic from the CIA, who are the ones that utilize these assets and these the drug money and the election fraud. President Trump knew. If President Trump and Ratcliffe and, you know, everybody else that was involved in that comes out and says, oh, 2020 was stolen, we're not leaving, it's a civil war. There's a civil war in this country in 2021. Correct. They did it the way it had to be done. And people who are now, you know, insulting those people without giving them, you know, the benefit of the doubt to see what this comes of this, to me, screams, like Ash said, they're trying to cover their own assets, CYA, not CIA. They're covering their own ass. And I'm here for it, man. I was not impressed by that. And that just reeked of desperation.
There's also this element of, you know, President Trump kind of built trust with the American people by coming directly to the American people with messaging, right? He bypassed all the usual gatekeeping and channel strategies and whatnot. And I think election fraud is the one topic, maybe there's more, but certainly a topic where it's sometimes it's been just us and President Trump. Right? All of the institutions abandoned us. All of the parties abandoned us. Even the party that made all the movies last time around, right? They all abandoned the issue of election fraud. Everybody, you know, got afraid. But President Trump has never dropped this issue. But when it comes time to sharing the reality of how the elections were saved, and ostensibly we can trust them now because Serbia was raided or something. President Trump is the dummy, and it's these other people who saved it, and they're the ones that are telling you the truth, and President Trump is being manipulated or owned by some foreign country or whatever else they're saying these days. That story to me is a non-starter.
So I agree with everything you just said. And I guess my last thoughts is I thought it was comical when the guy said that he had to leave the United States because the FBI was after him. So he went to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you guys, Switzerland is crawling with FBI and CIA. So you didn't actually go any place where there isn't FBI.
Wait, I thought they were neutral. Isn't Switzerland
Swiss is neutral.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
Globalist headquarters.
Exactly. I just thought that was comical that Mr. CIA, I'm the bad guy. I've been in Afghanistan. I'm running from the FBI.
Maybe they took a boat in the middle of the worst storm.
Oh, I
ever.
love the boat story. The boat story is my favorite. The catamaran.
The boat story was just, it was maybe more interesting.
Then Jaws ate a helicopter.
Oh, no, it was more interesting than the boat story? The fact that John didn't know what a catamaran is.
John didn't know what a catamaran is?
Nope, he had to look it up.
Watch Jaws.
That's a Florida thing,
I
guess.
Which Jaws Colonel, was? Which one did the is that the second one?
It was two, where they went out to the island. Yeah. So we don't have any rumble rants, so we don't have to go through that. I do want to give Colonel the final thoughts here. The one thing I want to point out, and it just dawned on me now, we've talked before about the predictive programming in the media and in Hollywood. We had the Tom Clancy, the Jack Ryan feature on Amazon, where the last season was literally the Machado story rolled out. The woman that's overpowering a Venezuelan dictator, and she's all about for the people and everything else, and the CIA gets her in office on that one. Then we also just had a movie recently, and I don't know the premise of the movie, but Jake Gyllenhaal, I think it was Jake Gyllenhaal, is a Marine who came back from Afghanistan and has to rescue his CIA interpreter, Afghan interpreter. And I just thought that was
that's pronounced Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal, whatever. But on that note, Colonel, final thoughts are yours.
Well, I just think that all of our collective experience, you guys' efforts in election, my experience over the last 3 years doing this research, the fact that we're in this hive of researchers that have done such extensive, all of us have a piece of this. And that's what I love about this community is we can jump on here and use all of our shared research material and go through something like this video and almost give a gut check of that checks out, that doesn't check out, this checks out. For me, it gives me, and of course I joke with my Gladio glasses, but now I look at everything with them on, and I thought it was incredibly insulting now that I am where I am as far as this research knowledge, that you had somebody get on there and tell such, and this is nothing against Laura Logan. I just recently met her. I love her. I think she does an amazing job. And maybe she put them out there for us to do exactly this. But that guy had literally at the end of the interview had no credibility with me, none. Because if your underlying story doesn't check out, you are building your story on a foundation. His foundation had critical flaws in it. So anything that you say materialistically after that, I have to immediately discount. You have ruined your credibility for anybody who understands anything about the CIA with the facts as you laid them out. And I think that's a critical forced error. I think in their arrogance that they go in and establish their bona fides, which is exactly what he was doing. Because I've watched so many CIA interviews now. They have a methodology to them. And as a matter of fact, you guys know that that's part of their curriculum, that they're taught how to present this material to convince you while they're lying that they're telling the truth. And so there's now a level of arrogance that goes on because they literally think we're stupid and that we don't know all of the stuff that we know. Yeah. And then they build on that ignorance to then sell you the product that they're selling you. And to me, now that we can check out the foundation, go around and kind of check for the cracks, their story falls apart. And I love being in this community. I love you guys. I love your research that you've done. And I love being able to team up with you and go through this kind of material. It's what I live for, actually.
It's like it's like Ashe, the guy, the lawyer guy. You're not a lawyer, so you can't comment on. You don't know. You didn't pay attention to Tina Peters' trial the way I did, so you can't comment on.
I saw that.
It's the same thing here. You're not CIA, so you can't comment on the CIA.
He disappeared real quick, though, didn't he?
He did.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I was like, oh, he did not just say that.
You got to make these. When these people are retards, you have to call them retards, and he deserved to be called a retard, and apparently he didn't like that very much. I don't know. So, Colonel, last question: do you think are you more in line with this is them trying to kind of get ahead of the disclosure that our elections are fake and that they're going to roll out a new system? Or do you think with Ashe, and I kind of agree with Ashe as well, that it's a CYA, cover your ass? They know it's about to come out and they want to try and, pass this off as we weren't involved in this. We promise.
No, I mean, it can be an and. I don't think it's an or.
Okay.
I think they're trying to cover their ass with the made up lies. But I also think they're trying to get ahead of the DNI and Trump's disclosure to try to sell us the next version of their cheat scheme, as opposed to going back to paper ballots. I think it's an and.
Yeah. And if they happen to see this podcast, hey guys, there's plenty you can do to prove all this stuff. Bring receipts. One of the things they said is there's 14 ways they steal the elections and they never do it in the adjacent jurisdictions. Okay, what are the 14 ways? Because I can tell you all sorts of ways that they stole the 2020 election that did not involve the machines necessarily, did not involve Venezuela, did not involve Maduro, did not involve Cuba. I can name tons of ways that they stole it. And I do agree that there's different ways throughout the country that they steal this. They also said, they shave it off of red districts and nobody questions it. That's exactly right. I agree with that 100%, that they shave. But anyways,
there's so many ways and so many tactics: fake voters, fake ballots, fake counts, and within each one of those domains there's 1,000 different things. Listen, I would agree with Colonel. This is not like I hung out with Laura Logan a couple times in 2022. I think she's brilliant. I think that she has a great CV in terms of reporting, and Emerald I consider a friend. I've spent hours on the phone with Emerald talking through election things. Just because I like people doesn't mean that I'm going to 100% believe and non-critically believe, just without question, believe a story that I'm being presented.
Amen.
It's very interesting to me that in this process of the past few days where we've been going through this, almost always what you get is an appeal to authority. Right. But General Flynn is supporting this. But Patrick Byrne has said, and he's been here.
Yes.
But Emerald, we know Emerald. But Lara, we know Lara. Yeah. Okay. But that's an appeal to authority fallacy. Let's talk about the arguments. Let's talk about the story that we're being presented. And does the story hold up? In this case, I don't think it does. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's for good hat reasons or bad hat reasons or gray hat reasons, or nobody's wearing fucking hats. Everybody's got a sombrero and nobody knows what's going on. I don't know. But I'm telling you, the story doesn't make sense. To me, doesn't make sense. And you're never former CIA. And anytime the CIA is the good guy and we're uncritically bringing that into, our worldview, at this point, truthers, at this point, truth community, if we're doing the appeal to authority fallacy thing, go back, your chutes and ladders, you've gone down the slide, you're back at the bottom, start over.
That is not what discernment is.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. All right. We did have a couple rants come in. Petty429 says, click that thumb. Heck yeah. Thumbs up, guys. Please smash that. Thank you. One Ohio Gal Now. Thank you. And you're welcome. And also thank you. Artsy Joan. Oh, heck, I'm slow today. Love the Colonel. Thanks, y'all. God bless. And then another from Artsy Joan. Say hi to Lily Pad. Is Lily Pad
Lilypad's
there?
on the farm. She's on the farm with a bunch of animals and with Buttercup, the little French bulldog that Annie has, and they're best friends, except that Lilypad is like almost 10 and Buttercup is a tiny puppy. So she's the old lady that's super annoyed by the youngin', but we're having a blast. I'll take pictures.
All right, guys, we'll smash that thumbs up. We do have, I think next week we have Kathy Latham coming on. Now that the RICO case in Georgia has been dropped, she is free to speak. So we're going to have Kathy Latham. I know we're going to have Travion Cuddy and Harrison Floyd on.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have all these folks on. They'll be on this show. I know I'm gonna have some of them on my show as well in other conversations. So rumble.com/CannCon. I'm also gonna try and get Colonel Towner on my show as well here coming up to maybe with Alpha to unpack all of this and tie more into the CIA aspect. So be sure you're subscribing all over the place. Stay tuned to Spellbreakers is coming up. I think it's already started, followed by Only Lands. And all your fun times here at Badlands Media. Colonel, thank you for coming on the short notice.
Thank you for the invite.
All right,
Always
God
good to
bless,
talk
guys.
to you. Bye, guys.
Smash that thumb.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.